district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text, that trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? We are back in the GOAT District for a very, very special, especially if you're watching the show right now, it's for sure special because you're probably playing in the championship weekend, as we call it, week 17. All the money's on the line, whether you're in a final or you're playing best ball type of format. This is what it all comes down to, Dan. What we worked all season for. We tried to help you guys get to this point. Hopefully you stuck with us all season. This is a special time here on the Player Profiler Network. Usually you find us on a Tuesday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. But Dan and I didn't want to miss out on Christmas week. We thought we'd come in with something special. We co-own some teams in the FFPC world and MFL world, mostly FFPC, in Dynasty, High Stakes Dynasty, which we'll talk about. Dan and I have 3 teams together. And of course, all 3 teams are in the final, Dan, of course, right? I mean, how else would it be? We've got main event teams together that have done well, and then we can talk about kind of our own, fantasy pros or anything else that we have going on, even Dynasty that we have going on individually. Before we get into, today the whole point of this is to help you guys set your lineups. We're going to obviously go through our lineups to kind of, so that it gives us players to talk about. But if you have specific questions, you have specific decisions that you're looking at for this weekend, obviously they're all crucial at this point. Make sure you drop them in the chat. I see Toronto Dave in there. Toronto Dave is one of our favorite peeps. We appreciate him always joining us, and he doesn't miss a show, Dan. He's with us today again. We appreciate him. And Dan, I always appreciate being on the air with you talking fantasy football. How you doing today, bud?
Absolutely. One of my favorite things to do is just get on here, talk fantasy, interact with the chat. Talking with JD we do it several times a week. It's not just the show, but this is one of the more fun times to talk. And of course, we always have good guests too. So it's a lot of fun being on the show, and I really, really appreciate it. So we appreciate all you guys hanging with us all season, especially as we made this move over to Player Profiler for some of our shows. So thank you for sticking with us, and we hope you have a fantastic final week here.
Appreciate you too, Dave. Appreciate anyone tuning in. And like I said, hopefully you guys are playing for the money, the trophy, the pride, whatever it is you play fantasy for. Like I said, is most likely on the line. So we're going to get into it. Like I said, Dan, we kind of hit on all the fantasy formats. We play best ball together. We play Dynasty. We play redraft. We're going to start it off in Dynasty. You and I have 2 500 teams on the FFPC, just loaded with sharks. It's not like a random, these are organized leagues with some of the best in the game, literally, that have taken down, some of these big tournaments on the site, $1 million winners, all that kind of goodness. And Dan and I do really well in these teams right now. I believe last year, and Dan, you always correct me on these because I always get them wrong, but I believe we finished first in one of them and second in the other last year. Is it Hardway?
Yeah, Hardway we finished first, in the Dynasty Depot League we finished second.
And maybe sprinkle some of the names that we're playing against out there, just so people know, especially from the high stakes streets. You guys will know some of these guys.
Yeah, so in the Hardway, if you play much Dynasty at all, you've run into Austin Martin several times probably.
The beast of Dynasty.
Definitely. And along with that, we've got Abib Agabatoga, who has twice won the Fantasy Pros Championship. We've got Theo Grimminger, of course. We also have Andrew Schellenberg in there. We have Noah Rudell is in there. He is a fantastic Dynasty and season-long player. Noah Bloom plays a lot of Dynasty. Todd from PA, Todd Burrows, you've probably heard of him. He and Shane Hallam are teamed up on a team. So it's just kind of a who's who. This thing is loaded without it.
Yeah, just a bunch of savages, which is that's kind of the fun of this, right? That the more you play, the more you want to prove yourself, and no better way than to play in the dynasty leagues with a bunch of sharks. So both these teams, Dan, we have one that finished in the hard way, was 11-3. Dynasty Depot finished 9-5. If I go to the hard way, we finished first in our division, third in the league overall. And then obviously in the playoffs, we've made it to this point. We had a bye, or no, we didn't have a bye.
Nope, no bye.
We did not have a bye. So we made it through to the final weeks where basically you're looking at total. It's not a head-to-head. So for those who don't play Dynasty on the FFPC, it is a total. We do similar in our Goats versus Pros team in the Goat District leagues. I prefer that format, Dan, just because it's less about who's playing who. It's more about like which team performed the best in those last few weeks. What's your thought on this format? Like the traditional head-to-head?
Yeah, I definitely prefer this format. I think it's fantastic because you do have 2 weeks, which means if you have kind of an off week, you still have a chance to make up for it. It just takes a little bit of the randomness out of those playoffs. But still, if you have one really bad week, you're probably not coming back. You need to have at least a pretty decent week to have a chance. You're not going to have one fluke week that decides everything.
Exactly. So for those who don't know, if you finish top 2, you get a bye. The first stage of the playoffs, those next 4 teams battle it out. And then the top 2 move on to play the 2 bye week teams for that final. And then, like Dan said, you got 2 weeks there. So we're leading right now, Dan, 155.35. The next one is Stay Ready at 151.35. Ben is at 116. And then Martin, who we talked about, Austin Martin, is at 114. So it's not done yet. So let's go to the live scoring. So far, neither team has any players that have played. If we go to the lineup, let me just give an idea of the lineup, Dan, and I'll let you give your thoughts on some of the aspects. I mean, especially our cute quarterback position. This is a team where we lost both Kirk Cousins and Justin Herbert at quarterback. Lucky me, I've got Dan the Man, the waiver wire phenom. This is the time of year where you realize how valuable playing the waiver wire really is, because Dan picked up Durham Smythe prior to the deadline with regards to being able to run those waivers. And I mean, this week with TJ Hawk going down, we managed to at least have someone to play. I mean, and Dan, this guy put up 13 points last week. Sometimes it just works out,
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't know if you want to modify the screen, but if you do, I can share the screenshot of the lineup here.
Now, are you able to share it? Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, let me get that off for you. Sorry, let me just. Yeah. We haven't done this in a while, Dan. So I'm a little rusty. there you go.
All right. Okay, and I think you'll have to put it in.
There we go.
Okay, so this is our starting lineup. As JD noted, we did lose both Kirk Cousins and Justin Herbert, and so that really has kind of changed the calculus of the finals here. And then we lost TJ Hawkinson last week, which was another big blow to this team. Fortunately, for the most part, we've got good depth, so we've got Baker Mayfield in there. I feel pretty good about that. During the regular season, we lost Jonathan Taylor and Kyron Williams for, large chunks of it, which made it tough. This team, I think, would have gotten a bye had we not.
Agreed.
lost so many players. But, we've still got a team that's pretty well loaded for bear here. Jonathan Taylor, I think, is going to be kind of interesting because he just hasn't quite been as good this week, JD, don't you think? Or this year as what he's been in past years. There's just kind of that, I don't know, he looks more tentative to me. Just not quite running with the same authority, but still definitely a stud running back capable of going off at any time.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with JT is he was off for so long coming off injury, especially running backs. They seem to go with momentum, which is why often you'll see offenses run with the hot hand. JT's a stud. Like you said, Dan, he could put up 20, 25 any week. We're hoping it's this week at home against Vegas. The thing is, this team, hasn't had AR. Like this team, kind of like meaning the Colts, kind of like our fantasy team, has been dealing with injuries as well. I mean, Pittman now is I believe he's going to play. I'm hoping he's going to play, but I understand, he recently also got injured. So this team's been dealing with injuries. It's hard to get into a flow as a running back. Hopefully they can get that momentum going because they are still a playoff team. And That's what you like, Dan, right now with a guy like JT is that they need him. They need him to produce. They want to make the playoffs. When you're this close and you're kind of in that middle, you don't want to miss the playoffs and then miss those high draft picks. So that the Colts are going to do everything they can with Gardner Minshew. And, of course, JT will be a big part of that. So we're hoping he comes through. The interesting thing is, was James Conner is a guy you and I went after a lot in the offseason. Is this a guy, is this one of the teams where we picked him up or we already had him? Do you remember?
We picked him up in a trade before the season.
Okay. Do you remember at all that trade or no?
I think we picked him up for like a second or something like that. I mean, or maybe it was a couple of thirds. I don't know. We got a pretty good deal on him. It was to a team that was at the time looking to rebuild. And actually, I believe that team ended up in the playoffs with us. So let me double check that.
There you go. Okay, you check on that. So the reason I ask is Connor. I mean, when he's on and he's healthy, now they've got Kyler back, so he's giving you in that like 17 to 23 point range, which is for an RB2, which we're lucky here because he's our flex, Dan. Yep. And that's why I'm asking, because I think this is significant. When you get like last week, he put up 22.2 against Chicago. 17.9 against San Fran. So when he's starting, I mean, he's going into Philly. It's a tough matchup, but having that depth, I think, is huge at running back. The thing that hurt us, Dan, other than injuries, is the fact that Najee Harris and Jalen Warren just split carries all season. We didn't really see like one guy injured for a long period of time where you can, then just slot in the other guy. We brought in Najee, I believe, also in a trade. I think that was an early offseason one, if I remember correctly, and we brought in Jalen with it. So I'm glad we did because we have the depth, but it made it difficult when both guys are splitting and they're getting about 10, 11 points each.
Yeah, exactly. Let me bring up our bench here. So, you can see, we've got some pretty decent bench depth. It would be nice to have Keenan Allen for these finals as well. But, this is a team that's it's super, super deep. And so, even when players are going down, other than our tight end, we were rolling with one tight end because there just wasn't really anybody good on the waiver wire. What I do like about Durham Smythe and the reason why I selected him, and this is just for those of you who really might need help at tight end and you need a Hail Mary here. With Jalen Waddle out, that's going to push Smythe into getting more targets.
Yes.
So he definitely got more targets last week when Waddle went out, and so I think we're going to see the same thing here. The Ravens are not; they're okay at defending the tight end, but they're not world beaters at it. So I think this is probably the most reasonable alternative that we had coming off the waiver wire, which is obviously not the way you want to handle it, but we took a chance with Hawkinson and. We came up snake eyes on that one.
But again, because we worked that waiver wire, Dan, we still managed to skim through, with the Jake Brownings, the Baker Mayfields. Baker Mayfield has been nice, I'm sure, for a lot of teams right now. I think probably leaned on him especially if they went kind of later quarterback or they don't necessarily have those stud quarterbacks. I mean, Baker was definitely a nice surprise this year using the weapons that he's got in Evans and Godwin, and even Naughton looking good some weeks, especially in those tight end preem weeks. So I like the Durham Smythe, like I said off the bat, and you nailed it. The fact that Waddle is out or even injured a bit, it's allowing Smythe to get more options or more targets and more attention from the quarterback than he normally would if everyone was in healthy, especially this time of year. So that works out for us nicely. We're able to put a guy like we talked about James Conner, but also Calvin Ridley, Dan, who was quiet for a bit, smashes at 25.8 week for us last week. And we're hoping that continues this week at home against Carolina.
Yep, exactly. And that's the main thing. You got to follow the trends at this time of year. You see guys on the upswing. And, if they're playing well right now, I'm going to put them in over almost anybody. If you happen to, like I picked up in most of my dynasty leagues, Demarcus Robinson was sitting on the waiver wire, right? Wide receiver
Nice.
for the Rams, who's been putting up 10 to 20 points every week for about the past 4 weeks. And I was really surprised that there wasn't more competition to get him, because you know what? I can give up that last spot, especially in these FFPCs. We're going to be cutting down to 16 anyway. It's real easy to grab a guy like that for, these final couple weeks and be able to throw him in there, because you know what? He's working. And if I got a player who's not working really well right now, I'm going to take him out and I'm going to put in Demarcus Robinson instead. So, you've just got to be willing to roll with those kind of punches. James Conner is definitely working right now, so that's the kind of guy you want to see in your lineups as well. So don't be afraid to bench guys that aren't performing and put in some guys that are actually doing some good.
Yeah, and I mean here with our kicker defense situation, we do have Indy, who's been producing pretty well except for last week with 1 point, of course, Dan.
Right.
But Justin Tucker, I mean, you can't have better than him, especially this time of year, putting up 16 last week. So we do have teams together where we've got a bit of depth at those positions, the defense and kicker, where we have some wiggle room and we have decisions to make. This is not one of them. In Dynasty, it's a little harder to do that, to carry that weight on your team, unlike those redraft tourneys where you want to make sure going into those championship weeks, no waiver wire, you at least you're able to put a man in the slot. But especially if you got a guy like Tucker, Dan, no point in necessarily carrying an extra body there for that position.
Right, exactly. And Tucker came through. We were a little bit nervous about him last week, going up against San Francisco. And this is why you just got to start your studs. So
you got to play your studs, Dan, and that's why when we come down to a lot of these decisions, I'm like, I know, I get it. I know we want to, we're playing the defense or the coverage or the whatever it is that Vegas is saying it's not, going to be a high scoring game or whatever it is. But I just feel like, look at Njoku. Like, imagine you sat him last night just because you thought the Jets were going to shut him down or something. You got to play guys, especially that are on a momentum this time of year, that are, trending upwards. You want to ride those guys this time of year. So again, as much as we're going to talk about start sits today, and you want to make sure you're looking at all the angles, putting in the time to make sure you have the right lineup in, there's a reason you're here. You probably rode your studs, or the ones that fell you were able to replace properly and fit in those bye weeks. That's fine. But when you're deciding between I don't know, like an Antonio Gibson or like, a JT or, something where there's a pretty big difference with regards to the ceiling that you can get, especially this time of year. And especially if you're an underdog, look at that. Are you an underdog going into this week? Are you favored? Do you need that ceiling play? I'm the type of player, Dan will tell you, I'm usually going for ceiling. It doesn't really matter for me what situation I'm in. I'm usually going for ceiling. I just feel that's how I've been successful. That's usually how I'll play it. But, don't outthink yourself is what I'm trying to say, Dan.
Right, exactly.
All right. Anything else to touch on this team? We've got our lineup set. I mean, we've got Najee and Warren on the bench who played. That was Thursday, wasn't it? Or am I getting my weeks mixed up? No, that was not Thursday. I'm getting my weeks mixed up. Never mind.
Yep.
So Pittsburgh are playing at Seattle. We've got both running backs. Gibson, B-Rob's out, isn't he?
Yeah, more than likely.
More than likely. So Gibby's like a nice flex option if you have him this week. I think it is against San Fran, at home against San Fran. But again, if I'm not mistaken, running back is not one of their strengths. Rushing defense.
Yep. Yeah. So I think we've got probably the right lineup set here. And the nice thing is we're running in first place. We've got one other team that's right there with us, and the other two teams are like 35 points back. So it's a nice situation because it means we would really have to fall down to not finish in the top two here. And looking at our roster, I think we're certainly going to finish second, and hopefully we can maintain our lead on first. So, though I will say that a Beebs team, stay ready. That is also a very, very tough team. So, anything could happen here.
It is, yeah. What was I going to say, Anthony? You're sorry, you were asking, man. It is. We're going to hit our dynasty teams first, and then we'll roll into the redraft main events and FPC teams. So let's go over to Dynasty Depot, Dan. If we have nothing left on this team, another 500 league. This is obviously those who know Dynasty Depot, and if you don't, go check it out. You can basically buy and sell your fantasy football teams from the FFPC on there. So if you've got a team, whether you're in the playoffs or not, you don't want to be in the league anymore. You want to, maybe just you built up a team and now you want to kind of go build another one. Whatever your reason is, it's a great market to buy and sell. Like I said, dynasty teams on there. You'll find ones that are loaded with draft picks, without. You get to kind of shuffle through and shop through these rosters. So it's kind of fun, Dan. A nice added addition to the fantasy football landscape. But let's look at our team. We finished 9-5. We finished in this one in second place overall, first in our division. So again, we get the bye week, which was nice. And then in the playoffs, we are currently in second place with 184 points. G-Dubs, obviously in first. The G-Dubs, the legend, 194 in first place. Currently, Dynasty Depot 139 behind us, and then Fairway Greens and Masters League 109 currently, Dan.
Yeah, so we're in great shape on this again to finish top two. I don't think there's any way that Fairways and Greens can catch us. Dynasty Depot would have to have the game of their life. Plus, we have a pretty bad game to be able to catch up to us. So, this is kind of turned into a two-way race between us and G-Dubs. But this is why I'm certainly glad that this is a 2-week playoff rather than a 1-week playoff. Because we had a monster week, and it would just suck to lose 194 to 184. Like in a semifinal game or something like that. In the other game, if it would have been 139 to 109, then you'd really feel like crap. So,
and that's what's nice about the format. You're kind of protected from that when you're in this format. And Dan, this is a team where you talk about depth, especially at the receiver position. We definitely have some decent options. When I look at Elijah Moore, obviously played last night, but he was still a decent option. I believe he got injured, but he did put up a touchdown, gave you a solid outing last night. And then Noah Brown, who's been decent. He's been dealing with some injury, but with Nico Collins is back now, isn't he?
Nico Collins is more than likely back. So
that's correct.
Yep.
So Nico Collins is back. Noah, again, he's obviously when the main guys are out, Tank Dell is still out, obviously, but Noah Brown still goes in as the wide receiver 2 spot. And then Stroud, is he playing this week? Last I saw, he was.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like he's going to play for sure.
Awesome. So again, your Houston receiving game, elevates there with Stroud coming in. And if you need a flex, I don't think there's anything wrong with Brown, Dan. But lucky, Jaden Reed is a guy that I've got in a lot of my flexes this season. And those teams most of them are still running. Jaden Reed or Rashid Rice are kind of my favorite flexes right now from the rookie bunch and the newer guys. But we're lucky to get Jaden. We've got Aaron Jones in the flex. So a bit of a Green Bay mashup there. They go into Minnesota. And then you've got Tyreek Hill, which, again, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but a guy we went after early in the offseason was this team, right, where we got Hill in a trade?
Nope, that was
the next
versus
one.
Shows. Yeah, this one we drafted Tyreek in the startup draft.
That's right. That's right. I knew we made a move for him, and yeah, it was definitely our turned around pros versus Joes. It used to be our ugly duckling, but now we might actually take down a ship in that one. But we'll get to that one next. Dan, what do you give your thoughts on this team? I mean, we've got Mostert. We had him early, and we've been riding him. We've got Rashad White, who's not turned it, but he's kind of stepped it up, especially these last few weeks, which we were all hoping for. He's a guy we were invested in heavily. We've got guys like Gus Edwards, who has been a really nice depth piece, 14 points last week with J.K. Dobbins out. Talk about what you like about this team and kind of where you see, if any, decisions that we have to make.
Yeah, the main thing I like about this team is it's got enough firepower. By scoring 184, that shows the firepower for sure. And it's also got good depth, which is what you want to have going in. And also I notice Noah Bloom that is in the chat. That's go with what you got. G-Dubs, who is sitting 10 points ahead of us in this particular league. So welcome to the chat, Noah. Glad to have you here. We're not going to give away any secrets though. Sorry, man.
Yeah. We were bigging you up earlier. We're honored to play in the final, but we're definitely not going to give it to you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something special, Dan, about winning these leagues. When it's not just a random group of guys together. It's guys that you're kind of in the chat with and you play against in different leagues, and these are the pride wins.
Absolutely, yeah. It always feels better to win when you know that your competition is really, really good. So, and JD was talking about our depth here. And fortunately we had the depth. We had Amari Cooper, who got us 51 points last week, who isn't playing this week. But when we look at our lineup, I don't feel too bad about where we're sitting at. And we continue to make moves here too. Like I picked up the Las Vegas defense because I thought that was one of the best defenses left. Even though we have Baltimore, this was more of a defensive move. I wanted to pick up Las Vegas because I didn't want anybody playing them against us, because I think they've got a really good matchup, and the Vegas defense has been scoring in this format like 20 to 25 points every week. So, I think there's almost even a conversation about whether we should be playing Baltimore or Las Vegas this week. But, it's pretty tough to go away from that Baltimore defense. So, we'll probably sit pretty tight there. But, having some good, just good depth allows you to handle these little things without too much trouble. So I think does that cover everything for this team?
Let's that covers everything, Dan. You said it. You got to play defense too. Like for those listening, with Dan's pickup of Vegas there, 20 points last week, and Baltimore put up 14, but at least those 20, like Dan said, weren't against us. Let's go to a quick word, Dan, from our sponsor. We're a bit late on this. Just we got into it, and once we get into it, it's hard to remember the details. So let's go to a quick word from our sponsors, and we're going to come back, guys. We still have another Dynasty team, Pros versus Joes, Superflex Dynasty team to discuss. We are in the final in that one, and then we're going to roll into our main events, playing for $1 million on the FFPC right after this.
This episode is brought to you by Rival Fantasy. Rival Fantasy, the coolest fantasy platform not enough people know about, but they will once I'm done, baby, because they're always innovating. They just rolled out seasonal leagues. We set them up for patrons, for our listeners, and they funded over $1,000 in payouts. That's what Rival's all about. They're always innovating. They already had the fantasy book where you can take overs and unders, stack them up, multiply your payout, but then they added challenges so you can set your own lines and put them out there for the community, and then you can browse the community's lines and say, hey, this guy's crazy, I'm going to take the other side. It's cool. And they have fantasy bingo. Rival Fantasy is reminding me how much fun I can have with fantasy football, and use that promo code PLAYER. The promo code is PLAYER. They give you a $100 instant deposit match plus $25 plus a free play. That promo code is PLAYER for up to $125 in deposit bonus and a free play. You can't beat it.
And we're back to this Week 17 Championship Week Start-Sit special. Extravaganza for those playing this weekend, playing for that money, that trophy, or that pride. Dan, Pros versus Joes. we're lucky enough to be invited as pros in this league. We share a team together, and it's been kind of our ugly duckling, you could say, in the sense that we just couldn't get this team on a wing, in a winning order, I guess you could say. And we made some big moves in the offseason. We'll talk about it. You might have to refresh my memory. I know this is the team we talked about earlier where we did add Tyreek Hill. We really turned this around, Dan. We finished first overall in the league, 11-3, and first in our division, of course. So we get the bye week. I mean, this is proof, Dan. You can never give up on a team, and if you work hard enough in the offseason, make the right moves, you can, end up like this and playing in week 17 when maybe you didn't expect to 365 days earlier.
Right, exactly. And, this one we did make the move for Tyreek Hill. We picked him up. We were hurting at running back, so we picked up Aaron Jones also before the season. So, that really helped us out. We did have to give up Kendre Miller. That looks a lot less problematic now than it did then. Unfortunately, Aaron Jones didn't help us out for much of the season, so we were still struggling at running back for many, many weeks. But we had enough firepower everywhere else to make up for it. We had Kirk Cousins on this team too, so that was a big loss for this team. But fortunately, we were able to, hit the waiver wire late after some of the teams had kind of given up. Like normally in these Superflex, any quarterback really that's on the free agent waiver wire ends up getting picked up. But the last 3 weeks of the season, maybe not so much. And I picked up Flacco for this team proactively. I got him for $1 just as soon as they were even talking about him signing with the Browns, because I was like, man, this DTR guy, he's all right, but sooner or later they're going to end up turning to Flacco if they want to make the playoffs, and that's what they did. It was a little bit, a little bit of a white knuckler last night starting him after Amari Cooper was declared out. I was like, man, I really hate starting Flacco here, but our only other option was Bailey Zappi, since Tommy DeVito is no longer in it, and this is This is what happens when you lose a quarterback and you don't have a good backup. You end up scouring the bottom of the waiver wire like this. But if you keep scouring, you can get a guy like Flacco, and so we're already sitting in a nice spot this week. So this team, I think we've got most of our decisions made. But JD, why don't you go through and just kind of look at who we've got in the starting lineup, and we'll look at also. Who we might put in off the bench if we decide to make a move.
For sure. And Chad, I see your questions. We'll get to your questions. Maybe we'll hit one as soon as we're done this lineup before we get to the redrafts. So like Dan said, Lamar Jackson right now, obviously starting. Dan picked up beautifully Joe Flacco off waivers, who's been riding our super flex spot, give us just under 25 points last week, outscoring Lamar Jackson, of course. Devon A-Chain we drafted him, didn't we, Dan?
Yes.
In the Dynasty draft. So we've got A-Chain at running back, Aaron Jones as our RB2 there, or RB1, whichever one you call it, 1AB. Got a nice kicker, Brandon Aubrey. The nice thing with kickers, Dan, in Dynasty is when you get someone like this, if you can keep him on your team, I mean, this guy's been rock solid, man. Plays in a dome, plays with Dallas, and he's a young kicker who's just been on fire. Noah Brown, we talked about earlier, nice flex spot. We currently have him in our flex spot. Darren Waller at tight end. We've got Hunter Henry, who's questionable, who's had a bit of a spike a few weeks before the prior week. Gave you a 0 last week. Kate Otten was doing all right. Gave you 2 points last week, but again, a solid kind of flex, especially in the tight end premium leagues. We talked about Tyreek Hill. We made a move for. We paired him up with AJ Brown, which is definitely a beast combo at receiver in a league like this. So right now, Dan, it looks like we're looking at Noah Brown in our flex. Possibilities on the bench. We had Josh Palmer, what's his deal, Dan? Is he playing?
He's concussed, and he hasn't practiced at all this week.
Oh, yeah,
so
okay.
Right now we've got Noah Brown in. I think if Palmer ends up starting, then we'd probably put him in over Noah Brown. But for now, it's pretty tough to envision.
Yeah. So I mean, they're the same guy, I guess you could say, yeah. Dan. Maybe Palmer getting more of that wide receiver one volume with Allen out, but you're kind of expecting a similar outcome with them. So it'll just be dependent on who's available to play. But another Kirk Cousins team, Dan, I feel like this is going to be the trend with a lot of teams. And then those teams, it just depends on who did you pick up. Like some teams have got Purdy, who took over the slack. Some other teams have got Jordan Love, who you and I were very high on in the offseason. So, we got to fall back on him. But it really matters on who you're able to pick up, especially if you lose your quarterback, because then, your whole season kind of depends on it. So lucky Dan was just super active because he picked up Tommy DeVito, Billy Zappi. So just, we have options, so if Flacco, for whatever reason, flattened out last week, which he didn't, or this past weekend, the past week, at least we have options to put as our super flex number 2, I guess you could say, or QB2 behind Lamar. So being active, Dan, on the waiver wire, the other common thread through all these teams, and I always repeat it in the shows because I got to give you credit. You are the man when it comes to waivers. You'll find guys that I'm not even seeing sometimes when I'm going through. So you're definitely the king of the waivers. So you guys want to make sure you're following at Overhyped Sleeper, no E on the end if you're not already, because the man works the waiver like no other. And again, this time of year, you really, really see the benefits of that.
Yeah, without a doubt. I have one team that's playing for the 101 this week, and I've been selling off all my assets as they, anytime anybody got any good and it was worth anything, sell them off for a draft pick, so I came into the 101 tourney with a team that was very, very weak. But I've basically made my living off the waiver wire from week to week, just grabbing guys like, yeah, this guy should have a good week this week, so putting in the DeMarcus Robinsons, getting like the Las Vegas defense for this week, all that kind of stuff. And it's worked for the past 2 weeks, and hopefully I can make it work for one more week. But, being able to pick up the 101 with a squad that was just extremely weak like this one was, I kept a couple 3 decent players, but really pretty much everybody else would be bench fodder. But I'm just trying to scrape a starting lineup out of them every week, and so far it works.
All right, let's get to a question, Dan, before we get to our redrafts, the main event on the FFPC. We're still in the running. We still got, I believe we're still in the top 100. I'll pull that up while we get to Dirt Bike Addict. Is asking, we appreciate the donation there, needing high upside, pick 3, DK, CEH, Zamir White, Higgins, or Eckler. He gets 3 out of those, Dan. Does anyone stand out right away?
Yeah, I think there's definitely one that stands out in the negative, and sad to say that's Austin Eckler. I just don't see the upside there, so that's probably the first one I would put to the wayside, which really makes it, out of DK, CEH, Zamir White, and Higgins, sit one of them. For now, I think I'd probably, if we're going upside all the way, it's got to be CEH or Zamir White that sits. I think Higgins, as long as Chase doesn't play, you got to have Higgins in there. DK Metcalf, that's a Mr. Upside guy, very boom bust. And I probably would play. Oh boy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Probably Clyde Edwards-Helaire there, just because he's likely to have the whole job to himself. Obviously, if Pacheco plays, you're not going to do that. Zamir White, he's going to give up a little bit to Amir Abdullah. So I'd say CEH, DK, and Higgins. What do you think, JD?
Yeah, I'm trying to see with the 2 running backs, kind of like you, deciding between Zamir. The nice thing with CEH is that offense is going to be scoring. They have incorporated Pacheco and whoever's been at running back almost every game. They don't necessarily, other than Rice, they don't necessarily have that firepower at the receiving game. Kelsey's been not his usual Kelsey, so I do like CEH there as a possibility in the flex. I think you have to play Higgins, and yeah, I think it's probably DK, Higgins for me, and then between those 3, if you like to play your studs, I don't hate Eckler. Who they playing, Dan? Is it
They're playing Denver, which is
that's right.
Yeah, Denver is not very good against the run, but even so, I just have a hard time playing Eckler because it's been such a shit show there lately. Though as I'm looking at who the Chiefs are playing, they are going to be up against
Chiefs, Cincinnati.
Up against the Bengals, yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, the Bengals have been getting run over on defense. They're just not a good defense. And you do have the Raiders playing the Colts, which is a run funnel defense. So that one's probably the toughest pick there.
For me, Dan, with KC being a 7-point favorite, 6.5 at home, you got to think. And I don't know, just the way these two teams are playing, I feel like KC, this is like a get right game for them going into the playoffs. And if they're leading, they're going to lean on that run game. Whereas right now, Vegas is underdog by 3.5, which is basically a coin flip between these two. But again, just kind of making it easy with running backs. I like to be on the better offense. So with everything I just said, I'm going to take the CH side there as my third starter behind Higgins and DK. Hopefully that helps you, Dirt. Good luck this weekend. Hopefully you take that down and we helped you out. We had another question. I'll get back to that. I think Dave had a question we'll get back to. Why don't we look at our main, Dan? You and I were lucky enough to go to Vegas this year. Both of us. I know you go pretty much every year, but I was able to finally make it south of the border. And we were able to draft. We drafted our team together. We have a team that we split together in the main. And then we had a team that we won as a group, yourself, Theo Greminger, Andrew Schellenberg, and myself, from winning the Pros versus Joes tournament last year. So again, it's nice when you can kind of build your bankroll by wins, right, Dan? And kind of, level up when it comes to your entries. So we did that with the main event. Let's start with the team, the Overhyped Goats, that you and I drafted together in Vegas. We finished 10-2.
Yep, and if you want to throw it up, I've got it ready to go on the screen. Yeah,
let me get rid of that. So we finished 10-2, first overall in the league. And again, it was not an easy league. It was pretty loaded, live draft, some vets down there, Dan. And just overall, I'm trying to remember who did we not have the or maybe that was the other draft. This wasn't the one with the Go Bills guys, was it?
No. Nope.
That was the other one, I think.
Okay.
Okay. So obviously, that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see where we are with. Sorry, I'm just fumbling with this here. There we go. Main event championship. So we are, Dan, currently. Why can't I find this? There we go.
Yeah, if you want, you can throw it up on the screen. I've got it ready to go on the show.
There we go. So we're 146 right now, the Overhyped Goats in the championship leaderboard. And if I recall, Dan, we're trying to get what, top 85? Is that what it was?
Top 80, yeah. And this is after, that's where we're sitting after the Thursday night game. So there are some teams that have leapfrogged us that hopefully we should be able to re-leapfrog ourselves.
Yeah, we've had a couple solid weeks. Week 15, 163, 168. Week 16, even though we had the bye, just two consistent kind of weeks. So we're hoping this week we can kind of get back under the 100 mark and in the kind of more in the money. Dan, we're trying to at least get back an entry right into this tournament, and then maybe a bit some. And look, who knows? Maybe you get lucky and go on a run. I don't know how far up we can go with this team, but. Either way, right? 146, not bad, Dan. How many teams in this tournament? Do you remember?
There's like 7,000 teams overall, but of course we're in the championship bracket. I'm not sure how many teams are in the championship bracket. It's probably like 1,000 or so, something like that, I would guess. So we're sitting at a good spot.
4,200 was the, I believe, the entries into the main. There were, so we did the lives. Okay, so let's get to our team. This is one of those teams where, again, injuries at the quarterback position, Dan, hurt us with Justin Herbert. Thank goodness for Brock Purdy.
Yep.
Comes in, saves the day. Again, just a solid season. Yeah, he's got a bit of a hiccup last week against Baltimore, but I mean, this man just basically carried our team all season, Dan. Him and Herbert. But it's funny. I was just thinking. Remember the first time you and I had to decide between Herbert and Purdy? It seemed like such a weird decision to have to make at that point. At that time, we're like, can we really sit Justin Herbert? Now it's like almost like, oh yeah, for sure you're going to sit Justin Herbert, especially in certain matchups. So maybe talk about the quarterbacks here and how we had to juggle that before we get into the rest of the lineup.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you want to throw this up on the screen or not.
Sorry, Dan. I kind of forgot about you there. Sorry, buddy. There you go.
There we go. All right, so this is the team starting lineup that we're putting out there, and yeah, the Brock Purdy, Justin Herbert thing. Of course, early on we were just starting pretty much Herbert without question, but when we got into the last third of the season or so, it started to become a real question about who do you want to start, and I had the same problem with I call it a problem. It's a good problem to have for sure. But I had a team that was number 1 overall in the NFFC RotoWire Online Challenge, and I had Herbert and Brock Purdy as my quarterbacks, and I actually made the move a week later than I should have. I got like 13 out of Justin Herbert, and Brock Purdy threw up like 30 some points or something like that because they have 6-point touchdowns over there in the NFFC, and so. I still ended up finishing first overall in the regular season, which was fantastic. It was fun, but I was afraid I was going to really be kicking myself over that 20-point swing, to the negative where I started the wrong quarterback. But fortunately it worked out. But right now, of course, we have no choice. It's Purdy, do or die, because all we have is Justin Herbert for our backup quarterback. Then we got DeAndre Swift, who finally got off the schneid last week. Great to see. And Jahmyr Gibbs at running back, so feel really good about those. And we got a solid set of wide receivers, tight ends, flexes, all in there. So we've got Olave, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Evan Ingram, who's getting just a ton of work right now, looking like a real league winner. Jaden Reed right now in there at flex, and then Trey McBride we're able to have as a flex in here. So that's really working out well too.
Dave got lucky last week. It's nice when you make a mistake with your start sit, but still make it through. Amon-Ra, he's right now my emoji or my profile pick on the X machine there, just because he's like my most owned guy right now on all my teams that are going through best ball tournaments, redraft, and including this main. So definitely him and Olave were crushed for us this week. Last week he put up 52 points combined. So they've been solid as young receivers. Jaden Reed, like we talked about on our other teams, has just been an awesome flex, especially recently, and especially if Watson unfortunately doesn't play. Trey McBride you talked about. And then we rode Gibbs and Swift, who were both, especially Swift, and you and I were salivating when he was sitting there. Just the value that he offered in that offense. Again, running back and in a good offense that he had the talent to take over that backfield, and he definitely did that. So solid team. We managed to save to work out the QB situation, even though we lost our stud. And that's part of it, Dan. You got to get lucky every once in a while with these builds and have the right combination, especially one QB with the two quarterbacks. We have Anthony Richardson, Kirk Cousins teams. I've got a few of those where if I didn't manage to get someone off waivers that was able to save that team didn't go anywhere. So we did it here. We're happy to be still competing at this point of the tournament, Dan. And hopefully we can get we again another team where we've got two teams as defense. Anthony was asking earlier, Dynasty, it's not always optimal. Like Dan picked up Vegas in that one team to play defense, but it's a little harder in the Dynasty teams because the Dynasty teams on FFPC are not super deep, right? They're shallower. So if you're able to do it, you've got a spot, you do it. But in the redrafts, I think we all agree it's probably optimal just because you need decisions to make. Even the kickers, if you're able to, you never know. kicker gets an injury, you got to have someone else to be able to put into that spot, especially if you want to go deep in these tournaments. So here we've got Matt Gay, Jake Elliott. Elliott's going to start for us, and then Dan Denver is a defense that's really come along now, playing the Chargers at home. So yeah, I don't think there's anything to add with this team, Dan. I just, like I said, we need like a smash week this week to really get back up into the good money. Maybe I'll pull up the payouts and stuff. We can look at it just to let the people know what the levels look like.
I think as long as we get into like, I don't know, 85th or something like that. Let me pull up the payouts real quick.
I've got it right here. So basically, 100,000 million for first. Obviously, the custom FFPC Championship helmet trophy, which is awesome just in itself. 200 grand for second, and then it goes down. At 30th, you're getting 2,500. 31st, you're getting 1,500 plus a main event. Then in 86th, you're getting $1,000. So that's why we're really trying to push to get at least in 85th, where we get a bit of money, Dan. Pay for those dynasty entries, even though hopefully we take it down all three there. And then we've got that main event kind of redo. It's kind of like your mulligan, free mulligan for the 2024 season. Whether we do that live or online, at least we've got that entry back.
Yep, definitely. So yeah, there's some nice payouts available to us. I think we definitely have the possibility to finish 85th or better with this team. So hopefully that comes through. And then we have that team that you and I are sharing with Theo and Andrew, and that one's also sitting in a nice spot to hopefully take down a little bit of extra money. I don't think we're going to get up into like the 10th place or better. That would really surprise me, but hey, we'll take down whatever we can here.
I mean, Dan, not to gloat, but look, at the end of the day, it's never about gloating. It's about we're not just on here talking crap, Dan. We're walking the walk. Another team, Dan, that finished first in its main is the Goat District Show team at 10-2, finished first overall. Some solid competition in that one. I believe that's the one where the Go Bills guys were, or at least there was one or two of them in there. So on that team, we'll go over it quickly, and then we'll get into just some Q&As, and then wrap this thing up so you guys can go set your lineups for the weekend. But then this is one where we did go earlier quarterback with Jalen Hurts, one of those top guys. We decided to pair him with Goddard at tight end. Goddard hasn't been awesome, but finally, and I strongly believe he would. He came up with a big game last week with over 17 points. We've got Trey McBride, which we seem to have on every team, Dan. He's been awesome for us. And then we've got, of course, Tyreek Hill, James Conner. CEH is going to be in our starting lineup this week. We've got JSN in a receiver spot. And then our Tajay Spears, also a very nice depth piece that we've been able to play. He seems to be getting more and more, Dan, as we get to the end. And we've even heard Derrick Henry talk about how he's going to take over eventually this backfield. So he's a nice kind of upside play there. And then, of course, our kicker, Brandon Aubrey, and Dallas defense. Hard to argue with either one of those. Yeah,
and this is a team that's actually a little bit injured right now because we could have been able to play Amari Cooper and Jalen Waddle. Which would have been nice to have in that starting lineup. But
and Jameson Williams never popped, so that's just one of those, one of those things which I'm sure a lot of people have. Cade Otton was a guy kind of those fleck bye weeks. He was a guy that was nice to squeeze in there as well. But you can see by like JSN, Spears, Trey McBride, you got to pick up the right depth pieces. And later on in the drafts, getting some of those upside young players, this is where it pays off, Dan, when they play for you late in the season.
Yep, exactly. So, this team is actually sitting, I think, in about 100 and something place right now, even after the Thursday night game. So, I think we've got a reasonable expectation to, add a little bit more to the bottom line on this one. So, not bad at all.
FPC, Dan, the Fantasy Pros Championship. You and I as a team, we can't figure this one out, Dan. We don't know why. The main event we crushed, the Dynasty teams we crushed, Best Ball we crushed. We come play the FPC, and you and I combined just equals a bag of pucks, I guess. As we say,
it's really bad because the thing is, you've got teams on your own that are doing well. I've got teams on my own that are doing well. But every time you and I get together in that one particular contest, it is just like bad luck is just gravitationally drawn to they're black holes of bad luck. It's terrible. So I don't know. We got to think about what we're doing there.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's the weird thing. If we both weren't doing well individually and then we combine and weren't, then I get it. But was coming into the weekend, I think I said in the Go chat, I didn't even know because I still figure out how to find each week. You know what I mean? Like where to go to find where you're ranked, because it's like you're either at live scoring and then you go to leaderboard and then you got to go to championship. So right now I'm at 204th, Dan, with my my best team in Fantasy Pros. And this team was 98th coming into before last night's game. So this is a team with Jalen Hurts, Christian McCaffrey, Kyron Williams, Chris Olave, Goddard, Zay Flowers, Tyler Lockett, Isaiah Likely. I've got Tucker and San Francisco defense. My depth pieces that I had were like Najee Harris, Tutu Atwell helped me out some weeks there. Kyle Kmet did really well for me. He's a little injured right now. But a team that finished 6-6, Dan, and still finished in the league in second place because of my scoring. So, it's not always about your record, and it's also keep playing your weeks. Like Andrew and I had a team in the FFPC that was down 1-5, Dan. I think we were either 1-5 or 0-5. And same thing. We finished I think we finished 6-6, but we were one of the top teams because of scoring. Can't remember if we finished second. Yep. But it's, that's kind of the way that these tournaments work. It's not always about your record. Head-to-head matters, but so does your score for.
Yep, for sure. We've got one question I want to make sure we get to.
Let's get that on there.
Noah Bloom is asking Goff or Mahomes this week, and I think we definitely need to answer this one. It's all right, let's Noah. You need to start whichever player is going to score the least, because that's the matchup you've got to decide against us in the Dynasty.
It's a great answer, Dan. That's a great answer.
So yeah, definitely take the guy who's going to score the least.
Isn't it weird, Dan, looking at like I this clicked in last night for some reason. It took me a while, but it's funny now looking at like the Dallas Detroit games. You know how many teams I have set up just for that matchup, Dan?
Oh yeah.
And it's like we're finally here. Did week 17 planning pay off? Stay tuned. It's now we find out. This is where I know last year, Pat, when he took down was it 2 million? What did he take down? It was 2 million, wasn't it? 3 million or 2 million? What did he take, Pat Crane?
I don't remember exactly what.
Anyways, a couple milli. He took down a couple milli on the underdog, and I remember him. Obviously those guys chip chasing over there. I was talking about that, but it's just funny now when we're here looking at these matchups. So you were saying it was I like to look at kind of over unders. So 52 is the over under with the Dallas.
Yeah, you don't want to answer this, JD. He's playing against us with this lineup, so
it's all good. I'm going to give him the wrong answer, Dan. Don't you?
Okay. Oh yeah.
Go. Yeah. Come on, Dan. All right. So, any other questions, Dan, in the chat that we missed? I thought there was maybe one.
I'm sorry, when we're on Player Profiler, I don't have the ability to throw them up there, but Kyle Freiberger had a couple.
Carl Freiberger. Yeah. Have Hall and Taylor locked in. Need flex. Have Mixon, Connor, and Walker. Who should be my flex? This is full PPR. I don't think you can sit Mixon right now.
I almost think you can't sit Connor. Walker is definitely the one I would feel the most comfortable sitting right now.
Yeah, for sure. It's between
Seattle is just having too much trouble. But yeah, Mixon has done well, but the last couple weeks not quite as well. Connor has really been coming on. I mean, he's a big part of that offense. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown just went on IR earlier today. So they're starved for good offensive pieces, of which Connor is one. So anytime I have a team like that where I feel like they're going to be, they've only got a few pieces they can run the offense through, I want one of those pieces. So I'm probably going Connor there. I can understand the argument for Mixon, though.
Yeah, I mean, they're both going against like KC right now, 28th against yards per rush attempt. So I just feel like Mixon's been such a big part of this offense, no matter who's been at quarterback, especially recently. I think it's close, Dan. First of all, we like both these guys. But if I'm looking at who's playing to win, who's playing for something this time of year, that's usually where I lean when it's really close. So I'm going to go with Mixon in the better offense against KC. But I don't think I think either one is probably the right answer. You know, it's one of those where after the week happens, we're going to be like, oh yeah, that was an easy decision to make. You know.
So there you go, Carl. At least we eliminated one of the three for you, and you can decide whose logic you like better to pick the other one. So, and then Toronto Dave had one attempted to roll out Shaheed over Warren PPR. Enticed by the potential of Shaheed making some big plays this week, especially. You know, Dave, I can't argue against that. You know, because the problem with Jaylen Warren is his upside is so capped. I mean, you know he's getting you probably around 10 points, but the problem is he's not going to get you anything over like 15 at best. And I think with Shaheed, your floor is lower, but your ceiling is higher. So I guess it kind of comes down to, are you favored in that matchup or not? If you're favored, you might want to just roll Warren, but if you think it's going to be close or you're an underdog, I would go Shaheed. You know, don't play for the easiest loss or the friendliest loss, as Scott Pianowski likes to say. You want to play the guys who can actually win the game for you.
Give me Shaheed, man, all day on that one. The Warren Harris is torture to ride.
Yep.
With Anthony Cincy KC game with Burrow. So other than that, Dan, I think we hit on everything. Our big money league with the Goat League with the Goats, we unfortunately didn't make it past last weekend. We had that team was kind of the wheels were kind of falling off as we got further into the back end of the season here. So that'll be a fun rebuild for us this offseason in that league. Do you have any best ball teams that are kind of in the running right now with the tournaments on the FFPC at all?
I don't know. I got knocked out this past week with my last couple remaining teams. So I had several teams that finished third in the first knockout round, and of course only the top two advanced. And all those third place teams were so close to being in second place. They were like, 3 points away, 2 points away. One of them was I lost. I was in third place by 0.06 points.
Oh, wow.
0.06. So disappointing. I was so hoping for a little scoring adjustment there, but it didn't happen.
How do I find, I know I had a never too early best ball team, finished first, was going far. I can't find where the standings or where do I find where I am in the tournament right now? Because I know I made it to the last week, but I just can't find that anymore.
It should be anything that's still active. They should have. I'm going to throw up my team's thing, but if you scroll down,
I've got leagues, that, and then I go in the league.
It should be somewhere in there because every week it'll add a new one down at the bottom. So look at the very bottom.
I think I know. So you have to go. You have to click on the score. No, that just brings me to last week's score. Yeah, I don't know if anyone knows in the chat. I'm just trying to find out where I am. I know I have a team that's playing in this final week in the Never Too Early. I think it's for like 20 grand or something, but I can't find it for some reason. So if you guys know how to get to that, where it shows me where my team is ranking, that would be huge. At JD Go District on the X machine. I think that's it, Dan. We've hit pretty much everything. I'm not going to brag about my fifth championship in the Matt Hicks leagues because he's probably sick of hearing me every year talk about that team. I just crush every year, Dan. Just it's one of those English Premier style where there's no playoffs. You just play the whole season out. Okay. And I think every year these guys think my team's going to fall off, but sure enough, Dan, you know how we roll. Let me just read this roster. And my quarterbacks, it's one of those where I had Cousins, Goff, and then I traded Jordan Love and Mac Jones for Justin Herbert, and then Justin Herbert gets hurt. So I've been riding Goff alone with no super flex. I've got Kelsey and TJ Hawk at tight end. I've got Devontae Adams, Brandon Ayuk, AJ Brown, Nico Collins, Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel at receiver. I've got Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, Kyron Williams at running back. So feeling pretty good. Make a couple of moves this offseason and try to go for 6 in a row. But
there you go.
Dan, I said I wouldn't brag about it. See what you made me do. Come on.
I'm sorry. I goaded you into it.
You goaded me. There you go. I love it. All right, guys. You guys have been awesome. We appreciate you guys hanging with us for this very special Friday afternoon episode of the GOAT District. We wanted to bring you guys something useful. We want to help you guys win this weekend, unless you're a G-Dubs and you're playing against us, of course, in the finals. But hopefully you guys take down your leagues this weekend. You make the right starting lineup decisions. Hopefully we helped you do that. Dan, you have any wise words before we close this out for anyone still playing?
No, not really. I mean, just enjoy the season for what it is. I mean, if you're still playing right now, you're in the championship, or at the very least, like a third place game, and so you've done well. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean, fantasy football is just like, the forces of anarchy are just ripping your team apart week after week after week after week. And if you can survive that and get to the end like this, that's quite the accomplishment, no matter how you finish this week. So just take pride in what you've done, and and then write down your lessons for next year. Things that you learned, make sure you get them written down somewhere so that and that you can incorporate that for next year.
For sure. My big tip, I said it earlier, I've said it often, is just don't outthink yourself. Like, don't play some random dude you just picked up off waivers, that you haven't played all season, or, to replace a stud, or try to be logical when you're looking at your lineups. Think of what got you here, and that should help you. Hopefully, like I said, we helped you guys. Hopefully we helped you guys this season. Just some kind of some news on the GOAT District overall. That we did want to share before we close out the season, and we figure on the Player Profiler Network is probably a good place to do it. Just due to kind of personal situation, lifestyle situation, nothing bad or anything, just having kids and all that kind of fun stuff. Things change on my end this week. We've gone strong, Dan. 7 years, the GOAT District. Started as a podcast. Nate Pilmer and myself started, didn't know anything about podcasting or anything about podcasts. And here we are, managed to get on YouTube, and you guys have been amazing with the support. Guys like Harry Snowman, 1912, Anthony, Toronto Dave, you guys have been awesome with just the support overall, and we really, really appreciate it. So we're not done. This is not the last show. Like, Dan and I still have shows we're going to do. We'll put together a special, maybe have some old hosts on, some guests that we've had on frequently, that kind of thing. We will probably do a playoff challenge special like we do every year. So stay tuned for all of that. We'll still be on for the next couple weeks or so, but just wanted to give you guys a heads up, not just kind of fade out and you guys wonder what happened to the GOAT District. So, I mean, Dan has been, I got super lucky to have a guy like Dan want to do this with me, as often and as long as we've done it. And it's been an honor to do it. And Dan's become, one of my best friends through this. And I'm happy that I've been able to, obviously do it with him this whole time. So Dan, not to get all sentimental and stuff, but dude, you're the best. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man. And right back at you, JD. I gotta say, JD gave me my start with the podcasting thing. I'd done, like a couple one-off shows with Todd Burrows, but wasn't really doing anything. And JD said, "Hey, I've got an opening. I think he'd be great on a podcast. What do you think?" And I was like, "Well, let's try it." So, I've learned so much, and I just appreciate you so much, JD, for everything you brought. I mean, you're such a great show host, and you keep the flow moving and everything else. All the stuff I'm bad at, you're really good at. So I just appreciate how you do everything you do to keep this thing up and running, and the behind the scenes stuff too. I mean, JD he's working so hard at it, and I understand where he's coming from. I mean, family and work have to come first, and so if it's time for a change, time for a change. And I just really appreciate having been on here with you, JD. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this, and just to let all you out there know, I'm sure I will pop up somewhere. Don't know where. Going to probably take a 3 weeks to kind of figure out what options are out there for me, but I still plan to get behind the microphone, do a little bit of this. I just enjoy talking to our guests so much, and so I want to definitely do something similar. So thanks for everything you brought to the Goat District, JD, and thanks for starting it. And it's been a great ride for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And Dan's like the hot free agent right now. You guys know how good Dan is at this, and I'm sure it won't take any time for people to start reaching out to him. But it's been an honor. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Like I said, whether it's here on the Player Profiler Network or on the Goat District channel, you guys have been awesome. And it's not. We'll still be around. Dan and I are still going to manage team and crush leagues like we do. And you'll still see us in the X machine, dropping some goodness. But look out for Dan at Overhyped Sleeper. Make sure you guys pay attention to where he is. We'll help share that information with you guys through the Goat District Twitter account. But like I said, guys, it's been a blast. This has been awesome. Good luck this weekend. Make sure you smash and win those trophies. Represent the Goat District. Give us a shout out on the Twitter machine too, on the X machine. If you won your league and we helped you out, let us know that you took it down. That means a lot to us. And other than that, man, that's all I got, Dan. I think we're out. We'll check you all later.
Goat District, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be trading. And I always be trading. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.